Okay, well, let's start recording. My God.
Okay. What do you want to talk about this week?
Well, I got a good list, but your idea from last week was budget planning and strategy for complex projects.
hmm
I feel like we can just talk about complex projects in general. I got like 3 points that I think we can probably hit. What makes a project complex, which is always
Yeah,
interesting to
that's
try to
good.
unpack. The impact of that complexity, and then the two types of project costs, which is more or less related to complexity, but it's also just me kind of mentioning a little bit more about the discovery and the importance of discovery, especially
Yeah.
when you have a complicated project. So, yeah, I mean, I got my list, but let's hear it. Like, what from your perspective makes a project complex?
Anything there's a couple. I feel like the minute you start generating revenue from your project, it's almost immediately adds a layer of complexity because there's just more user interactions. And there's a lot of features and a lot of usability that people just don't think about. Like just basic example, someone says, yeah, and then, it's an application and they can pay through the application. And then you start asking questions like, okay, well, are they do they need to be able to see historic invoices, receipts? What does the account look like? What kind of information? What kind of information are you storing? Like it just like immediately gets more complicated.
Yeah, I
And
love
then
that one.
I
That's a
think
good example.
it's actually a mix of the complication is a mix of like the actual project and then the people behind the project because sometimes what someone thinks is simple is actually way more complicated than they think. And so they're kind of want to do something that is overcomplicating things. So, one of the examples I think of immediately is a project experiences we've had with animation. So, someone says, and then we're going to have all these dynamic interactions. It's a revenue generating application and there's some level of entertainment through like some dynamic interactions. And so that seems simple sometimes to a client, but then you start asking like, what does that even mean? Like, how many times are they seeing these interactions? If it's the same interaction every single week or day, it potentially could get stale. Like, how do you keep the
Yeah.
engagement? And then also just the budget, like what level of interaction or animation are we talking here? I think you have used the description of like, are we talking about Pixar or are we talking about AI slop?
Yeah. Are you hovering over a button or are we like creating a whole narrative? Do we have to hire an
Yeah,
animator for this? Like
yeah. And
it's
I
a
think people
gradient
go
of
into it
complexity
being
for that.
like, I just want animation, I want games, I want like interactions, and then you're like, okay, well that's actually really complicated.
hmm Yeah.
So features, the type of product, or project.
I think the people part you mentioned is also interesting because it's kind of on the heels of what we talked about last week or the week prior about not including IT
hmm
early enough. So it's this idea of decision density. Like it's not technically difficult. It's just that maybe the people you're talking to about the project aren't including all of the people that need to be involved in that decision. So you lack a whole side of knowledge. There's a big knowledge gap between, say, like marketing and IT in terms of capabilities, needs, and complexity. And then it's great to have everyone at the table, but the more people you have at the table, you also run into decision fatigue. So the number of people involved in the project, I would also say, is like a good indicator of complexity. One thing I've seen that's very successful is
But
like,
actually,
okay,
question for you. So because we sometimes have situations where there's a lot of people, but it's not a complex project. It's just a decision by board.
but I think by nature of there being more people, it
Yeah,
turns into a complicated project because there's all
yeah,
those internal politics.
yeah.
I'm thinking of one of these national organizations we're working with, and they've done it intelligently, partly on our recommendation, which is they've set up a dedicated committee of 5 people. And those 5 people are the key decision makers. And it doesn't mean that we can't weave the other people and teams involved because they have subject matter expertise. Just means that they're not involved in the decision making process. So, I mean, that's how we manage that type of complexity. But
Okay, so that was the first thing was what makes it complex. What was the second point?
well, I mean,
I
I
want to
got a
spend a lot of
couple
time on the third, which I think is the most important.
totally.
Um,
Well, there's a few other points I just want to at least do quick hits of for what makes a project complexity, like complex legacy systems,
mhm,
third party integrations,
yeah,
which is kind of like the payment thing. Oh, we want to integrate with XYZ. Okay, well, do those platforms have APIs that we can even interact with? Are we building a custom interface for those APIs, or is it just a standalone page? The payment example is perfect because Stripe has all of the payment stuff, all the compliance stuff built in, and you can choose to build a custom app that's very custom on the front end, or you can just use Stripe links that handle everything from like subscription to payment. And those are just things you shouldn't be designing or building on your own unless there's actual value. So I think, yeah,
Hmm.
legacy systems, third party integrations. One thing about scoping that we talked about last week was ambiguous goals. We do hear this one often. It's like there's the brand refresh, there's a CRM migration, there's workflow design, but there's all of those different initiatives coalescing into a single project, which is an immediate indicator that this project could be very complicated and needs to be strategically scoped and put together.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think those are probably my biggest ones, other than project governance, but we'll get to that on a different podcast
Yeah,
episode.
there's like the technical complexity and there's the people complexity for sure, and
Yeah,
the project management complexity.
for sure. Well, so the next one I had is the impact of complexity. And to just start us off, I wanted to say it's rarely about can this be done? Like it's never a question of is this technically feasible or not? It's
Hmm.
can it be done within the time and the budget we have? Those are the two barriers. So for me, I always return back to that. I don't even know what we call it, but it's like that legacy triangle our industry always talks about: the speed, the budget, the quality. Pick two, like those are your options. And I feel like that holds so true for that question of the not being can this be done, but can it be done within the time and the budget, right? But yeah, from your perspective, impact of project complexity, like what's top of mind when you think about that?
No, I mean, I don't think there's a lot more. Hey, really, like I think you covered everything. It's pretty straightforward. I think, having gone through it, obviously to the level of detail that we have, pretty standard reasons why a project would be considered complex, and I think it doesn't change much. Like a
Yeah,
few
that's true.
key areas: technology, people, governance. I think, like, honestly, the people and governance part is harder to manage from a client perspective because, well, maybe not. Some clients know that they have like complex teams and complex workflows and
Uh, yeah.
tasks, and so they go into it knowing they're going to be a bit of a challenge, which is not really a solution, but at least they are aware of that. And then, yeah, on the technology side, I just think that, yeah, a lot of clients think their work is really simple, right? Which is why this topic is important, because
Mhm.
gives us a chance to kind of talk about like why something is more complicated and what questions you kind of need to ask yourself. And so, I think going into it, having a better understanding of like the scale and complexity of the work that you're trying to get done is important, because I find that the people that think their ask is simple also have zero idea what potential budget would be for the type of work that they're asking for. It kind of goes
Yeah,
hand in hand. Like, oh, we want
totally.
animation. Okay, what's your budget? I have no idea. I've never done this before. Like, okay,
Mhm.
so kind of a lot of work to do here. Get to
I know, like,
a realistic point.
yeah. Part of this is about like educating from the moment you get onto that scoping or sales call, because you're talking to someone who's often outside of
Yeah,
the industry when it comes to complexity. Even top tier marketing teams, like they don't quite understand the complexity of technology. Not everyone, obviously, but
yeah,
I think it's almost this weird expectation that marketing should understand the complexity of design, UX, technology, and all that. But really, their domain is marketing.
yeah. I mean, I don't even think you need to. I just think you need to just. I think a lot of times organizations don't go through a scoping exercise internally, and so they don't even
No.
ask some of the questions. And so you don't need to be like a technology expert. You just need to ask or like brainstorm what a user account looks like. What do they need to be able to do?
Hmm.
And then you'll start to realize straight away, like, okay, this is actually, let's at least start with the scope when we're trying to build this project, and figure out, what the top end of what this is going to cost could be, and then kind of scale back. But at least you've got a sense of the overall architecture, at least like a really basic just brainstorm of project. I know no one has time. Everyone's under the gun, everyone's rushed. But like if it's a priority, like a website redesign, even I'm not even talking about products, like even just a website redesign should be a priority when it's being done, because it's a huge component of your marketing and your digital experience.
Totally.
So just, workshop, 1 or 2 workshops,
Yeah, early stage. Because
come to the
there
table
are
with something a
2.
bit more real.
In my ideal world, that is the ask from a sales call. Help us scope this out.
Yeah.
Tell us what it's going to cost,
Yeah.
rather than, you get on the call and it's always just, we have this project, we need the budget for it. It's like, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit and do a discovery, pay for
Yeah.
that, figure that out, and then figure out the scope, because you might have to portion this over 2 fiscal years. There might be some things you want to do this year versus next
Yeah.
year or never, right?
Yeah.
But having that clarity at the start is just so critical. I think of, there's like 2 types of project costs that we see. There is the cost of doing the work, like the actual production, the design, the development, delivery, all of that stuff. And then the other
Hmm.
piece is figuring out what work we are doing, which is the
Yeah.
discovery, alignment, and specification. And that's so essential to every project. And we know
Yeah.
we get pushback from that. Like, yeah, we've
So let's jump into like, how would we tackle something that's very complex?
well, I mean, every project should have that discovery portion. Like, that's almost a non-negotiable at this point. It's only
Yeah.
10 to 15% of total budgets, yet it protects like 85 to 90% of your scope. So not doing it is very risky.
Yeah. So, just to break down like how we generally approach things is discovery, design, development,
Yeah.
support in every project. So I think people get confused and it's a communication thing and it's a like a knowledge based thing. But I feel like sometimes clients think that, so say, we've been through this many times, but someone comes to us with a project. It's really complex. It would actually take an impossible amount of time to scope it without getting paid, to be frank, because it's very complicated. And we're talking about
Yeah.
architecture. We're talking about like decisions that you can't make without actually engaging someone. And I'd say like maybe 30 to 40% of our work is like that. And so what we recommend is basically taking that discovery out of the full phase and treating that as its own standalone engagement so that we can spend the time to actually properly make a plan for whatever it is that project is going to be. And it's a part of the overall budget anyway. So you're not actually paying anything on top of strategy, design, development. It's just the strategy is being pulled out by itself, and you end up with deliverables or a plan that you can then also RFP the next phase if you want to, or look at other vendors if you want to. But typically, we end up continuing the work because clients like our work. But the important part is like just um, getting to some level of what's the word I'm looking for?
Clarity.
Clarity. Yeah, getting to some
Yeah.
level of clarity and consistency and detail as quickly as possible, so that everyone knows what it is that is needing to be designed, built, how much it's going to cost, what's the architecture, what are the integrations, what's the technical direction, like literally everything. And I think it's good for organizations too, because you can then take that and sell it internally. Now you have paid a fraction of the price of doing the whole thing, and you have a plan that you can actually sell internally if you need to, or
Yeah.
get internal engagement, or whatever internal planning you need to do from a budget or people perspective. gives
It's
you
like the
it
first
gives you the
deliverable.
plan. Yeah, it gives you the map basically, and
Yeah,
then
imagine if
from
you
there
have
it's just execution.
yeah. But it's like, imagine if you have your design brief, which is great, then you hand it to a team like ours, and then we hand you back like a full product requirements, scoped out,
Yeah,
prioritized based off of your audience, understanding the technology and ecosystems that it has to be deployed within. Like, that's a great plan and roadmap to take back to the team and say, this is what we want to work on this year or
yeah,
next year. And oftentimes through that product requirements stage, the team will learn they themselves maybe don't even have the capacity to work on some of those projects
yeah,
this year, right?
totally.
Because it's not just the budget thing. It's they have their own roles. This isn't their sole project
Yeah,
most of the time. Even in marketing, they've got other initiatives happening. So this can't take up another 90% of their time. They don't have that time
totally,
to give. So it just
totally.
means that the team can then focus on this. It's like a product playbook,
Yeah,
and
totally.
they should treat the website, integrations, everything. They should treat everything like a product. And to do that, you need a roadmap. You need a
Yeah,
plan going in there. A design brief that just says the website is legacy and doesn't match the brand. There's so much below the
yeah,
waterline there that
Yeah.
isn't talked about until we get in there and start talking to the right people and doing our workshops. So it is challenging, but at least we have a process to find that clarity.
Yeah. I mean,
And I do think it guarantees the work and feasibility later on.
it's honestly, it's not challenging. It's always the best way to go. The challenge is like, yeah, communicating it to clients.
Yeah,
They
that's
kind
what
of
I
just want
mean.
to go, go, go. Yeah.
Because the challenge, the the two I get most is we don't think there's any value in the discovery work.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, have I just not explained it well enough? Maybe, right?
Discovery is probably not even the right word, to be honest. I know we're using discovery a lot
Well,
right
we
now.
call it the think phase, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's
But
like,
even that, like, yeah, the closest thing, the thing that most people in the industry would understand is like it's a discovery, but it's not actually. It's a lot deeper than that. So I think that there's just a lot of it's a consulting engagement. It's a strategy and planning execution, right? I don't know
yeah,
what the word is, but discovery sounds like you're coming in to learn about my business. You know, like right off the
yeah,
bat, I think there's some preconceived notions about what a discovery is, but really it's a consulting engagement.
100%. Yeah.
So I think part of it is just yeah, communication, like trying to connect it to
Yeah.
things that people draw connections to and understand a little bit better, like consulting, for instance. But that's a
Yeah,
whole
for
other
sure. But
tangent we could go down.
that is a total different tangent. The second pushback I always get is always about time. Like, "Oh, well, we don't
Yeah.
have time for discovery."
Oh yeah, totally.
It's like, actually, like, without discovery, this isn't gonna happen
Yeah. 100%.
because then you have, production's untethered at that point. You don't what are you working on? What's the priority? Who's the audience? What does your system look like? You're never gonna sit down and just start building or designing.
Yeah, you can't think and make at the same time. Otherwise, you're gonna absolutely blow the budget and the timeline.
You just pulled out a Sister Karita Kent quote.
Oh, really?
The screen printing done? Yeah.
What'd you say?
It's basically that. You don't think and make. I mean, that's
Yeah.
paraphrased, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're two different things. So,
Yeah.
which is where we did the think phase versus the
Yeah.
make phase, which we
Totally.
now call prototyping
Yeah.
because that didn't land well with our own marketing. So,
Yeah. Totally.
we're still figuring out how to market the process, but
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
Well, I think that's
All
it.
right. Well, do we have any closing thoughts?
Uh, nope.
Okay.
I'm joking. No, just like make sure you're structured around complexity. Does that make sense? The more complex a project, the more structured the approach needs to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. And structure kind of implies strategy as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, like a structured approach to what are we doing internally, externally, and what are we making, what are we designing, what are we building? Very structured approach so that you can, yeah, just avoid the huge risks of
yeah.
budget, budget
And remember
timeline,
the
and ultimately just failing a project.
mhm. And remember the levers you have to pull, the budget, time,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
quality,
true.
right? Those are the things. You can only choose 2, so which ones are you willing to toggle on and off for that?
Yeah. When is it
Awesome.
appropriate? Sometimes it is appropriate to not flesh out quality completely.
For sure. Yeah, but we don't wanna ship slop.
Yes, definitely not.
No. Alright, well, let's
Okay.
end on that. Okay.
See ya.
See ya.